go into our Finder, which I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, it's going to be very similar. And just take the folder and just drag it right into Premiere Pro. And there it is. There's all of the elements. So I've got it all categorized for my own personal liking. Since you are downloading these individually, you're going to have a folder for light atmospheres, a folder for smoke atmospheres, and so on and so forth. So it's up to you how you categorize these. Yours may look different. So how you use them is so simple. You literally click, drag, take onto your timeline here, and go up to your blend mode here and change from normal to something like screen, add, or overlay. Most of these you're going to get by with screen and it's going to look just great. So here we are. We can see that we've added our overlay atmosphere color 1 to our footage. This is without and this is with. And you can see it already just put a nice color wash over our footage. That overlay has a lot of movement going on inside here. It's very subtle movement, but it adds a lot of life to the footage already. So without, with. It's also scaled to 100% because these are 4K elements. I can scale this all the way down to 50%, and it's going to film my HD frame, which is what I'm working with here. So that goes for all the elements. They're going to come in at 100%. You can scale down to 50% to fill full screen. Certain elements are going to work if you go even smaller. This element is also loopable. So I can just click, hold down the Option or Alt key on a PC and drag. And now I have a perfect loop if I play this back with the atmosphere, and I can loop this as many times as I want. So we've got multiple atmospheres here, all doing different, giving it different looks. So again, you're going to get one look at 100% here because it's a much larger frame. If I click here, type in 50%, it brings everything down smaller and gives it a totally different look. Again, this atmosphere is loopable. So I can click, drag, hold down Option or Alt to copy. And there we go. We've got a perfect loop here as well. I've got also elements like the smoke atmosphere. This one is not loopable, which is why it's a full minute long render. Change this to screen. Now we've got like a nice fog kind of atmospheric, house party vibe going on here. This is without, and this is with. Again, I could take this element, I could scale it down to 50%. And there's gonna be a lot more fog going on here because it's a much smaller element now. I've shrunk it down, right? So it gives me a different look going this way. I'll delete that. Again, you can go through these different elements. They all have subtleties to them, variances, all very interesting to work with. Also got things like grid backgrounds here. So this is an element that is going to cover the entire frame. And it's made to use as like its own building block, right? So if I bring it over here, and let's say I want to build some graphic on top of this, I could bring this in as a base. I could go into, let's say, my glitches, bring my glitch on top of here, set this to screen. Now we're starting to have a layered effect here. I could go into, let's say, my hacker text, bring it on top of here. I could set it to screen as well. And you can see I'm starting to just layer this up and make something really interesting. Let's see what this is. Here's an object. So here's a really cool box. It's a 3D rotating box. Take that, set it to screen. Now, personally, I think that's a little bit too much. So maybe I get rid of this guy. And now I've got a glitch, a box, and hacker text going on at the same time here. So you can see how easy it is to quickly build up complex layered graphics for your videos. Shrink down my hacker text. I can also position it over here. I can position it over here. Everything is movable and scalable. Same with the box. So let's say I just, for whatever reason, wanted the box over here. I also wanted it smaller than 50%. So this is one of those that you can just shrink it down. There's not an alpha channel here, but because it's set to screen, it works perfectly. You can see there's black here. So now I want to jump in and just show you very quickly how I created the trailer that you may have seen for Radical Retro Elements. And I'm not going to step through everything, but I just want to show you, like for this example, I use the flying text. This is a motion graphic template that comes in the packs. On top of it, I laid an analog noise, a VHS texture that you get. And I went ahead and scaled it down to 55%. Because 55%, I found like the texture here was working for where I wanted to come across with the look. If I scale it to 100%, you're going to see the texture here is going to change. See how it just got much larger with the noise value? Going back down to 55%, we see this line here, and I also moved it. So it started here, and I kind of just moved it over here. I just wanted a very slight edge to this. If I wanted this over on the opposite side, I could just duplicate it, rotate this one around 180 degrees, and play with the position a little bit. And maybe go into something like lighten. So there we go. So now I've got the texture on both sides and the same general look that I had before with the retro text flying in. Here I've got atmosphere smoke. I've got the light flicker going on. I've got a grid wall 3 going on back here, which this one looks just like this. Really cool stuff. Here I've got the mountain going, the mountain with the atmosphere color 2, which this is just a simple overlay of color that you can use. Works really great over footage or over the top of other graphics like we see here. I've also got analog noise grain 2 going on here. And that's what this one looks like. It's kind of like this pixelized, noisy, grainy effect that I created. Like I said, I had a lot of fun creating all of these. This particular scene here is actually light flare 3, which we're going to see right here, laid over the top, and it's set to screen. It could also work with linear add, which puts a little bit more brightness here in the middle. It's laid over object 2, which is the sun, and all of that is laid over tunnel 9, which we see here. So 3 layers here to comprise this particular scene. Now we've got tunnel 3 just kind of doing its thing. Then we've got, oh, this is an interesting one. So for this one, if I turn this layer off, I've got just object 14, which is the heart that we saw just previously. And above that, I've got digital noise 3, which is like this pink kind of noise you see here. Well, if I open this up into the effects control here, you're going to see I've set this one to multiply. So if I was to set it to screen, this is what it looks like, the pink digital texture over the heart. It's scaled to 100%. But setting it to multiply for this example, that digital texture is only going to reveal that heart when it's moving over it. So it makes it a completely, entirely different kind of look to it. And then we have grid wall 2. Here we've got a grid. Back here in the background, we've got some hacker text over the top of it. Then we've got some more analog noise VHS 2 over the top of that. Here we've got 2 objects just overlaid on top of each other. Object, this kind of sphere looking thing, is at 48% scale. Again, it's another one of those you can scale way down without having to deal with any edges you might see. And then on top of that, we've got this particular object, object 3, scaled up to 91%. Here we've got digital noise 4, object 18, and those are both over the top of analog noise 5. Let me also show you a quick way that you can change the color of all of these. And here's a good one I did. The simple way to do this is just to take your double click, go up to your effects control, and then go into effects. And here in Premiere, the easy way to do this is just to open up your video effects, go into color correction, and you can use something like color balance, hue, lightness, and saturation, which I have right here. And if I turn that off, this is what the original one looks like. On, it looks like that. And all I did was adjust the hue and the saturation. I wanted it to be slightly less saturated because there's full saturation. So I can drag down the saturation if I want it to be, you know, a little less in your face with the colors. And then I can just kind of drag this hue wheel and it completely changes the look of my graphic. So really easy to do this. You can do this with any type of, any of the graphics. I could take this one, for example, and let's just kind of play with the hue on this one. You know, let's say we want something that's a little bit more on the, kind of more in the greens, and we want to really bump that green up. So now I'm just bumping up saturation, and there we go. We've got a really vibrant grid system. So this is after color customizing, and this is before. So you can see, like I said, you can really customize these to what works for the look of your particular video. Here's another one. This is Hacker Text 2. I'll just bring up color balance again, and let's make it, you know, that's kind of interesting, a really dark blue. I could bump up that saturation. I could bump it way down. I could mess with the lightness, you know, like that looks like really very retro-y with the kind of like the not so black blacks. In modern day design, you see a lot of really black blacks, right? If that's even a term. But that, you know, looks very kind of 80s with that lightness kind of bumped up like that. Another simple way to adjust parameters for the colors are to use the effect called Lumetri color. And Lumetri has got a lot of features inside of it. I'm not going to dive into them too deeply, but there is some things you can change here, like the temperature. You can see our graphic is changing based on the temperature. We can also play with the tint here. So Lumetri is something you can use if you want a little bit more control over the color. Tone, the exposure, we can really make those whites or the hot spots really pop out. We can bring them down. The contrast, same thing. This one's a little contrasty to begin with. Highlights, you get the idea. A lot of control here. Also within Lumetri, you can adjust curves. So we can really kind of bump up and change things about this with the curves. That's how you can adjust all of the colors. And yeah, that's kind of, let me show you one more example I thought was pretty cool on this one, which is, where is it at? This example is just a simple flare overlaid on top of Tunnel 2. And for any of these, something else to keep in mind is you can also, you know, right click and hit speed duration and change the speed. You can speed them way up or you can speed them way down, and that'll completely change the look of these elements as well. Okay, so this one. So I wanted to show you this one really quick. What's cool about this one is that if I turn off these other layers here, this is what the original graphic looks like. It's like this pinkish red graphic. Again, if I wanted to change colors, I could use Lumetri or color balance. But what I did on this is I brought digital noise 1 in, and this is kind of like this green digital noise layer. And I set the transfer mode to overlay. Okay. So if I turn this layer back on, by turning it to overlay, you can see it completely changes the look here because only colors of the background tunnel are revealed whenever the digital effect is going on. So you can see there's greens and reds and yellows popping on and off, and it made it totally different looking. If I change this from overlay to something like screen, you know, it doesn't look so cool there, right? And let's try, yeah, here we are back to overlay. If I try multiply, multiply makes it just very green because that's the color of the glitch above it. But it's also revealing much less of the tunnel because the glitch is, anytime the glitch pops on is when it reveals the tunnel. So I just encourage you to really play around with the different transfer modes and layering of these elements. You can come up with totally new different elements by doing that. Hopefully that gives you a good understanding of how the trailer was created. Again, I just want to say thanks again for purchasing the Radical Retro Packs. Enjoy.